Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast with Prince Amukamara, the Chicago Bears cornerback, is brought to you by Compassion International. It's $38 for you to make a difference in a child's life. More powerful than poverty. That's what their campaign name is right now, and that's what it's about. It's about you and I making a difference for a child in need and releasing them from poverty. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum. That's the website to check out, and you'll see a list of children waiting to be saved in many ways, waiting to be released from poverty. And what that $38 provides is food and education and medical care and vocational training. These are basic necessities that we take for granted here, many of us, and yet there's children who don't have those basic needs. And the opportunity for you and I to provide those is made available through Compassion International. More powerful than poverty, $38 a month. Check it out, compassion.com/sportspectrum. Compassion.com/sportspectrum. Sponsor a child today. Today's guest on the podcast is Chicago Bears cornerback Prince Amukamara. Prince was selected in the first round, 19th overall by the New York Giants back in 2011. He played his college ball at Nebraska, played with the Giants from 2011 to 2015, 1 year in Jacksonville in 2016, and then came to the Bears in 2017, where he remains as a defensive back. He was a Super Bowl champion in his rookie year in 2011, Super Bowl 46, when the Giants beat the New England Patriots. In college, he was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year in 2010. And Prince has an interesting background, born in Massachusetts to parents who were natives of Nigeria and then moved to New Jersey and then Arizona. Has 5 sisters, and I love their names: Princess, Promise, Peace, Precious, and Passionate. That's pretty cool. And then Prince, of course, being the brother. And Prince is just a really great guy, and I've known him for a couple years. He's a part of our ministry here, the parent ministry of Sports Spectrum, which is Pro Athletes Outreach, and that was our opportunity to sit down together at a conference recently in Florida and just chat and talk about his journey to faith and some of the great things that happened with the Bears last year in 2018 and his coming to the NFL and just things that he's learned over the years. There's so much that we didn't get to, which will definitely allow us to have a second interview, a second podcast with him at some point here at Sports Spectrum. Take a listen, our conversation with Prince Amukamara from the Chicago Bears, right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Welcome, Prince.
Hello there.
It's good to have you here on the podcast. Excited to talk to you. It's going to be a great conversation. You just completed your 8th year with the Bears. Some would say it was your best season. You might say it was your best season as well. Had a great turnaround, winning 12 games. And we won't talk about the Philly game too much, the heartbreaker, of course. How would you assess your 2018 season, though? Let's start with on the field.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of hype surrounding our defense just because we finished top 10 last year, and then so going into this year, we kind of knew that we were already going to be better just because I think a couple of recipes that make a defense so great is having the same cast of characters, having the same defense, just because there's continuity and you know everybody, you know the scheme. I mean, you can see that in Seattle with the Legion of Boom. You see that in San Francisco when they had Willis and those guys. And so we knew that we were going to improve, but then like a week before we opened up with Green Bay, you see the ticker and you see the Bears are about to do a deal with Khalil Mack, and that was just like, wow. Yeah. And of course, what he did for our team and our defense, everybody got better. Everyone had career best, and he was really a huge part in really taking our team to the next level.
Success on the field is one thing, and usually it's created because of a bond that's happening inside the locker room. Tell us about that bond that you sort of saw surfacing a year ago in 2017 and then really taking shape last year.
Yeah, so every year the last 3 years of my team. I mean, the last 3 years I've been a free agent, and those times have been trying just because you kind of don't know where you're going to be. And one thing that's been huge for me in choosing a team was, okay, like how's the ministry on this team, and what's that environment, what's that atmosphere look like rather than, I mean, including talking to my position coach and talking to the coaches. Hey, I want to talk to the chaplain. I want to see the atmosphere here, and so those things go into my decision making. And last year it was great, and this past year it was even better with the addition of Chase Daniel and Trey Burton, just what they brought to our team. As soon as Trey and Chase came, everyone was in James 1. I think it was like the first day, it's like, hey, we're going through James 1, and boom, everyone was in there. And like I tell everybody, this was the most in my life as being a Christian. I've been a Christian since I was 15. This was the most that I've read the Bible and prayed, just because we had there's that Bible app that it's called the Holy Bible, and there's so many lesson plans and stuff like that. We were doing that, but we were doing like in real life amongst each other. So you saw management in there, you saw the trainer there, you saw the nutritionist, and it was just everybody. And it really felt like we were family. And I think it trickled down to on the field because that brought us closer.
How do you cultivate an atmosphere of faith within certain guys, the guys who are brothers in Christ, the believers, but not alienate the other teammates and still have a sense of making sure that they're feeling included and a part of this team?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you have to have just that one guy on the team that's bold, and on our team, it was a guy by the name of Sam Macho, and he wasn't afraid to make an announcement, and the coach would allow him to just say, hey, by the way, we're going through the book of John. Anybody on the team, management, like if you work in the cafeteria, like anyone can come. And there was just the response was great, especially in training camp. We did training camp somewhere else, and we had, even though it's like 20 to 15 minutes, but it was still worth it. And a lot of people came, and a lot of people responded well. And so we had just so many different ministries going on our team. I mean, I remember there was a couples ministry, and if you're single, you were allowed to go. And at first there was maybe about 4 or 5 couples, and then me and the guys that were in there, we would talk about it. Like one time we talked about prenup, and we would just talk about it in the locker room, and then everybody was like, whoa, everyone of course has their stance on that. But I like stirring it up a little bit, just because it creates dialogue, and everyone's like, man, where'd you guys talk about that at? Like, I want to get in on the conversation, and then they came to the couples Bible study, and just being strategic and stuff like that. I think that includes everybody, just because everyone has an opinion and everyone wants to be heard.
Speaking of camaraderie, especially with your defense, celebrations this year started to take shape, and I know that you had quite a few. If you go to your social media pages or your Twitter page, you can see some of those fun dances that you seem to have orchestrated, and that's why I wanted to ask you, are you sort of the leader in orchestrating what those celebrations are be like, and how long are you spending during the week trying to figure out what we're going to do if somebody gets a pick or a pick six or a touchdown?
Yeah. For the most part, I mean, I'm putting my picks in there and my suggestions, but I feel like it's collectively, like, a lot of guys have stuff that they want to do, and one thing that's great about it is that it's team stuff. So if everyone's not feeling it and don't want to do it, then yeah, you got to shelf that and stuff like that. So to really be like a top 3, we go in with like a top 3. So if we're not by the end zone, we'll say, hey, all right, we're gonna run to the camera. We're gonna do a group photo. But if we're in the end zone or by the end zone, then anything goes. And of course, I think the most famous one was the Motown in Detroit, and that was just a great one. And so I don't know who came up with it, but I just had it in my mind, like, hey, I think we should do like a boy band or like something, and then the lead singer was supposed to be the one who got the interception, and then the days leading up to it, and while we're on that, we only practice it for like maybe 5 minutes, and it's the Saturday before the game. So anyway, so Kyle Fuller that Saturday said, hey, if I get a pick, you're doing it. I'm going to go and give you the ball. And then so when we played, he got the pick, and I already knew as soon as he caught it, because it was to win the game, and I already knew, and then I got the ball, and then and then it was over.
Are you screaming, hey, don't forget the celebration on the second that pick's happening?
No, because it's like a play. Everybody knows it's been loosely rehearsed, and everybody knows the drill, and everyone and how we do it. Like you saw the backup dancers, they're just doing a common 1-2 step, and so I mean you see Khalil getting it, you see guys running off the sideline, offensive players getting in it, and we try to make it fun and easy for everybody to do.
Prince Amukamara is our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. We always ask guys who we've never had on the show to share with us their testimony. Tell us about faith growing up and how you came to know the Lord as your Savior.
Yeah, man. So testimony, like you said, I mean, it's simple. It's how you were before Christ, and when and how you met Christ, and how are you now after meeting Christ, like your response. And quick testimony. I grew up Catholic, and in the Catholic religion, I learned a lot about the law. I learned a lot about the Ten Commandments. So I kind of credit the Catholic religion into giving me like my self-discipline, my self-control, because I thought these things, if I could hold these things, and it started out at 10, like if I could hold all the commandments, then I can get into heaven. And then I failed. So I'm like, all right, if I could hold these 5, and then I couldn't do it. And it's like, right, if I could hold these 3, and then I made up my own. And then it went to, you know what, if I'm better than my friends and stuff like that, like if they're going out and drinking and doing whatever, as long as I don't do that, then I'm still good. And we know the truth that Christ is our true standard, and we can't even amount to the life that Christ lived, which is a perfect and holy life, and that's why we need a Savior. And so when I got into high school, my football coach introduced me to FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and then I started going to that for the Krispy Kreme donuts and orange juices. I tell you, one Krispy Kreme donuts is what got me saved. So I started going there, and then still wasn't hearing the gospel because my mind was on the donuts and stuff like that. And then we went to a camp, a sports camp, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to showcase my talents, get a college scholarship out of there. But it wasn't that at all. It was a big camp with different sports, and it was just different. Like we're breaking down our huddles to like for His glory and stuff like that, and just terms and phrases and Christianese stuff that I've never even heard before. So it wasn't until the last night they played, and this movie I might date myself, but they played a clip of Passion of the Christ, and just them showing us and us seeing what Christ did for us on that cross, and that did it for me. So from that point on, I had an altar call. I went to the altar. They did an altar call, and I said the prayer. I confessed my sins, and I said I want to follow Christ. And then from that point on, I became a Christian. There weren't no stars. There weren't no lights. What I was expecting fireworks or something like that. There was nothing. And then after that moment, though, I just had this hunger, like, man, like I want to listen to all the worship music we listen to up there. Like I want to learn more about this Jesus. So I try to read the Bible from Genesis to Revelations, and you know, if you try that, you stop in Numbers because all there is Numbers. And so I was like, all right, I burnt myself out, and I didn't have someone teaching me what it looks like. So I was still a Christian, but I knew I was saved, but I wasn't in the Word, and I didn't know what it looked like to walk. So like the first part was justification. Okay, my sins have been justified. I've been saved. But then the second part is sanctification, like walking out that daily life. And it wasn't until college to where a chaplain came alongside me and other teammates, and I had that community. And then my walk just went crazy. So I tell everybody, hey, I was a believer in high school, but I didn't become a follower into college. And those things are supposed to be together, but that was just my walk, my story.
So you get to college, and then eventually you get drafted in the NFL. You're a first-round pick with the Giants. How hard was that to suddenly be in a place like New York City as a believer, and you win a Super Bowl in your first year? So success is thrown at you. The world is thrown at you. People are pulling at you from every direction, and staying grounded in your faith at the same time.
Man, so I would just say I was just very thankful for having that foundation. The Bible talks about like if you can build your foundation on rock, or you can build it on sand. And no matter what, the storm is going to come. My storm was I broke my foot the first day of practice. I have never broke a bone in my body. I broke my foot the first day of practice. Everyone on Twitter saying that I'm a bust and that why did we draft you and stuff like that. So good thing that my foundation was built on rock. And then even after that, we win the Super Bowl. I mean, I could have done something crazy, like, man, like this is like, I mean, I've reached the highest point of any NFL player's career. Like we all do this to win a Super Bowl, and still that didn't faze me. And I think I had a quote, and I don't remember saying this, but someone quoted me, and it said like, even like basically this winning the Super Bowl doesn't amount to knowing Jesus. And it's crazy that I said that in that moment, and I mean it till this day. Like nothing gets like my blood boiled more than seeing someone saved and seeing lives change. So I'm very thankful that FCA, crusades, like chaplains, my mentors, that they help my foundation be really grounded on rock and not sand.
You've been in the league now almost a decade. We won't go that far with you, but it's been in the league now a while. What's the state of faith in the NFL in your opinion, and how has it changed or evolved from the time you came into where you are now?
I would say that there's a hunger for it. Like guys, it's like Jesus is being talked about, and guys are seeking. Guys are trying to seek truth, and guys are trying to find their purpose, especially when they realize like the league isn't really what they thought it would be. And also I think you see a women's ministry. It's funny, even though the league is about like us, but it's really not. I mean, like that women's ministry is thriving also, and you see the women want to be poured into, and my wife is doing a great job in doing that, and I'm trying to do my part in the locker room with starting the conversation and not slamming the Bible on someone's head, but just living my life and say, man, Prince, like when someone comes to me and says, man, Prince, like why do you have the peace you do, or like, dang, you just signed this crazy contract. Like, why are you still driving that 2010 Maxima, and stuff like that. And yeah, and I mean, I get, and sometimes it's not always like that. Sometimes I get made fun of, like, man, Prince, go buy your girl an Escalade, and it's like you having her drive this Honda minivan and stuff like that. So I get it from both ends, but really just trying to live the life that I've been called to live, and really do it with humility and joy, and also when if I see someone needs a word, I'm gonna step out and try to be there for them. And I feel like that's been our motto on the team, is just being there for others, being there for anybody who really needs it, and the response has been great.
I don't want to ask you about this, but I'm going to anyways. The end of the game and the way that you guys finished this season against the Eagles, does faith play a role in how you're able to move on from a game like that, or is it really just you're wired to be able to move on? Because it feels like there's some, it's a sour taste left in your mouth. unfinished business, all of those things that you'll probably use as motivation for next year. But how are you able to move on from a game like that after such a tough loss?
That game was tough. I mean, especially like you hear me describing like the culture that happened, that was happening on our team, like Bible studies everywhere, like guys loving on each other, and we were winning, and I've never been on part of that where faiths, lives are being changed, and the word is being read, and the gospel is being preached. All that's going up, and then winning's going up too. So you kind of see a direct correlation, and then so I'm thinking like, man, like is this our year? Like this, it's looking like it, and I was starting to buy in. And then Cody Parkey, the kicker, he's been, I mean, he's our brother. He's a believer, and he's been to all the Bible studies, our marriage and couple study. And so you see, and I know the clip's out there because I retweeted it, but you see when he kicks it the second time, because he made the first one, and then when he kicks it the second time, and it got tipped, and it hits the uprights, and then it hits the crossbar. And then you just see like guys go up to him, put their arm around him, even though, and as a kicker in that moment, you kind of feel like it's your fault, but it wasn't really your fault. Like there's so many things that went wrong in the game, like on our side on defense. There's a time we had 10 guys on the field. Then there's a time we had 12 guys on the field, and that's never happened to us before at any part of the season, and it happens to us now. So it wasn't all on him and stuff like that, but he put it on himself. Like he knows that he should have made that kick, and we were wanting that for him. But to get to the situation, you see guys put their arm around him and just pat him on the chest, pat him on the back, and just console him. And even before that, you see him like pointing in the air, and that reminded me like there's this brand, like God is greater than the highs and the lows, and He knows that. I was very excited to see that, because a lot of people are playing that video showing like, hey, like this is what life is. This is what life looks like, and this is what being a Christian is. And the fact that he praised God through that moment, like we were so proud of him, and it was just the overall game was a hard pill to swallow. And like you said, I'm sure we are going to use that as motivation in going into the next year. But you gotta love a guy who when things weren't going his way, he still gave God praise at the end.
Two more questions here with Prince Amukamara from the Chicago Bears. All right, so go back to your 22-year-old self coming into the NFL as a rookie, now going into season 9 in 2019. What is the one big piece of advice, could be spiritual, could be, financial, whatever it is, that you would tell your rookie self that you know now that you've been in this league a long time?
I would tell my rookie self, sheesh, I would say, I would say that, gosh, there was a verse. It's in Romans, and I think it goes like, for all things work together, and I think for the good of those who love Christ Jesus and is called according to His purpose. And I would just tell the 22-year-old Prince, just to remember that, even when it doesn't look like it's gonna work out, or even though it looks like or it doesn't look like your plans are following through. Like I remember you said yesterday, like your favorite verse is that Proverbs verse for basically, and gosh, it says I think Proverbs 3. Yeah, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, but His. And just doing that, because we have a plan for our life, and we have a thought like, okay, our life is going to go this way. But man, it's really most likely it's really not. And just to always trust in Jesus, and just remember that as long as you follow Him, that his plan is gonna come out no matter what. And as long as you're aligned with that and you have His perspective and you see life through His lens and not yours, everything is going to work out. Like, I thought I was going to be a Giant forever. I thought I was going to be a Giant for 10 years. And then after my 5 years was up, I was like, man, I almost thought like my career's over. Like, man, like things didn't go the way I wanted to. And then I go to Jacksonville. And Jacksonville, I had a cup of coffee in Jacksonville, but Jacksonville was a great year for me. Spiritually and a great year for me, just to get out of New York and see how another team was. And then I had the worst year I've ever had in my career. But then I get paid the most the next year in Chicago. So someone sees value, even though I had the worst year statistically. And then in Chicago, I have the second worst year, I feel like, statistically, but then I get paid the most I've ever got paid. I get a long-term deal, and it just shows that. I'm not saying that this whole thing is about money, but it just shows that that's just God's grace. That's just God's grace on me, and I can't put a name to it. That's why I'm calling it God's grace. And not saying that I'm a terrible player and I was getting scored on and stuff like that, but usually, like, this is a performance-based business. So if you're in my position, if you're getting picks, if you're making plays and stuff like that, usually those guys stay in the league longer. But I guess I was diminishing other values that I brought to the table, which is leadership, which is my veteran presence, which is I'm a technician on the field, and that had value, and I'm grateful that the Bears saw it. It was a great investment, and now this year I had, like you said, I had my best year yet, and getting finer with age, like wine. Just trying to hype myself up a little bit, but yeah. So overall, yeah, things aren't going to go the way you expect it to, but if you trust in the Lord, and if you love the Lord, and what does love look like? It's obedience. It's being available. It's being accountable, and serving. And I feel like if you just do all things, everything's going to work out.
Prince Amukamara, this has been great. Thanks for joining us here, and we'll just close it with this one. Tell us why you love Mafia so much, and that you play this game. Whenever I see you, it seems like there's like 3 levels of Mafia that are being played. Tell the audience that's listening, maybe they don't even know what Mafia is. Just real quick, what Mafia is and why that game has become like a staple to you.
Yeah, so Mafia is a game where picture 10 to 20 chairs in a circle, and there's one guy in the middle, and that's a narrator. The goal of the game is to find out who are the Mafia. So everyone gets dealt a card, and if you get a card that's the Mafia card, which is like a spades or whatever, there should be 3 Mafia. And if you get a spades, then you're the Mafia. And then there's a sheriff. The sheriff asks the narrator, okay, who is the Mafia? And then there's a nurse. The nurse gets to tell the narrator, hey, I want to save this person. And then nurse, sheriff, and then there's the Mafia. And then after that, there's the townspeople. So while everyone has their heads down in the beginning, and then the narrator will say, hey, Mafia, pick your head up. And then now the narrator knows who's the Mafia. All the other people's heads are down. And then he said, all right, Mafia, close your eyes and put your head down. And then it tells that to the sheriff. Okay, now he knows the sheriff. Tells that to the nurse. Now he knows the nurse. So then he'll say, Mafia, kill one person. So the Mafia has to be quiet, open their eyes, and like point at one person that they want to kill. And they say, okay, close your eyes. Now the sheriff has to ask, hey, is this person good? Trying to find the Mafia. And then that person closes their eyes, and the nurse has to save. Like, now they have to guess, okay, who did the Mafia kill and stuff like that. And then so my reasoning for liking it is because I want to be an actor when this is done. So I get to work on my acting skills. I get to deceive people, and because I'm so recognized in this game, everyone always assumes I'm the mafia. So I think people have caught up to me. But still, the best part is when you are the mafia and then you convince someone you're the townsperson. Like, you could be the townsperson. I'm thinking, like, man, like, who is it? Like, who do you think it is? And then at the end, we kill you, and then the narrator says everyone puts their head down, and they say mafia put their head up, and then you look at me like, and then I just give you a grin like, yeah, I got you. And so I mean, it's just a fun game. It's camaraderie. You get to see different couples bicker, and I mean, I remember the Hasselbecks used to always just have a great time with it. So I feel like you get to know the people that you do life with a little bit better, and you just get to know people better.
Prince Amukamara, this has been great. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and we'll be wishing you nothing but the best, my friend. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
And many thanks to Prince Amukamara for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. He's such a good guy and a lot of fun, and I love that he explained the game Mafia at the end of the interview. If you know Prince, anybody who's close to him, especially in the pro athletes outreach community, if not elsewhere, I'm sure, knows about Prince's love for the game Mafia. And if you know about Mafia, you should send him a note and let him know that you know about that game and that you like playing it. It's a very common game that I found in the circles of youth groups and other areas at church, even at camps that I've been to and spoken at. I've seen, teens and even young adults getting into this game of Mafia. So I appreciate Prince for enlightening us on that at the end of the interview, and just appreciate his heart for people and his heart for God. Give him a follow on Twitter at Prince Amukamara. It's PrinceAmukamara. It's a lot there, a lot of A's, but check it out. You can find him pretty easily. Prince Amukamara on Twitter. Great guy. Give him a follow. Let him know you heard his story of faith and sports here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. So thanks to Prince for joining us. Also want to thank Compassion International for sponsoring this podcast and partnering with us here at Sports Spectrum. For $38 a month, you can sponsor a child and provide access to school and medical care and food and vocational training, but even more importantly, the opportunity to get to know Jesus Christ as your Savior. That's what Compassion.com does. It's Christ-centered, every child being discipled in the Word of God. Over 150,000 children choosing to follow Christ in the last year alone, and over 2 million children in 25 countries being impacted by Compassion International, and really by you making that difference by sponsoring a child. So check it out, compassion.com/sportsspectrum, compassion.com/sportsspectrum, and sponsor a child today. As always, you can reach us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at sports_spectrum. We would love to hear what you thought of this podcast or any guest ideas that you think we should be thinking about going forward, people you think we should be interviewing. You can also email me directly, jason@sportsspectrum.com. I would love to hear your thoughts on this interview or any other guests that you think we should be having here on Sports Spectrum. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Have a great rest of your day.